Hey everyone, and welcome back. So doing a review today because I did get in the new 4K release of James Cameron's The Abyss. Now some of you know we're getting 3 James Cameron films finally in 4K, and 2 of them never even got Blu-ray releases, at least here in the US. So we're getting The Abyss, True Lies, and Aliens. Now, the first one I've gotten in, as of this recording, still waiting on the other 2 to come in, but I did get in The Abyss, and I did watch it last night, so I am going to share my initial thoughts. Not sure if there's going to be a full-fledged review or not. I may make some adjustments, so I'm just going to share my initial thoughts. I'll give it a score, but just know that it's a little loose at the moment. So first off, if you've never seen The Abyss, it's a fantastic film. It's James Cameron's 4th film, technically, if you follow his directing career. Anyway, it was first directing film, believe it or not, was Piranha 2: The Spawning, even though I think he technically got fired at some point, but I think he still directed at least, I think, like 80% of the film. And then obviously he did The Terminator, the film that really sort of got his foot in the door for real, and then Aliens, which then really propelled his career, where he was able to then go on and make The Abyss after that. And The Abyss technically is really, because the original Terminator was actually still a very low-budget film, and Aliens was obviously working within a franchise, so he, had to work within that franchise, which I think he was more than happy to. But The Abyss is definitely the first sort of big-budget film that James Cameron did within the studio system. And even though 1989 was definitely a year of underwater films, as I've mentioned in the past, in a previous video where we got Deep Star 6, Leviathan, The Abyss, was there one other one? I think that was it, at least for that year, but I could be wrong. All right, I'm going to put this down just for a second. So if you've never seen it, just real quick, it has to do with an underwater oil rig that has to go and search for a nuclear sub that has crashed not too far from them. And because there's a giant storm coming, they're the only ones that can get to it within any time, just in case there might be survivors on board. And indeed, there's a small military group that it comes down to join in. And then eventually, because of the storm, they get cut off from the above, and their habitat sort of gets really messed up, and so they're fighting for the survival. And then you got these other guys who are trying to do stuff with the nuclear submarine, and then in the meantime you also have these underwater beings that have sort of started to make their presence known. And so without giving too much away, it's just, just in case you haven't seen it, it sort of goes off from there. And this is definitely a case where the longer cut, in my opinion, which is on this release does have the theatrical cut and the special edition cut. And the special edition cut is at least, I think, 20 minutes longer, with a lot of extended scenes, a lot of new scenes, but specifically in the 3rd act really is where I think it makes a big difference. And this is definitely a case where, for me, the longer cut is definitely the preferred cut. And if you've never seen The Abyss, I would actually recommend watching the longer cut. So as far as the film itself goes, I love The Abyss, again, especially the longer cut. So for me, that's definitely a 5 out of 5 for the film. But now let's get to the new 4K release. So obviously, just real quick, here's the front of the, slipcover in this case. And there's the side with the title, and then there is the back, some of the details, and I think the inside basically is the same, but it does actually have 3 discs. So it has the 4K disc, has a Blu-ray. So the 4K disc has both cuts of the film, theatrical and the special edition cut. Blu-ray also has both versions of the film, and then there's an extra Blu-ray underneath here that has all of the extras on it. So I'm actually going to do this a little bit in reverse than I normally do. So as far as the extras go, there's actually a nice assortment of extras here, including one of my favorite things is actually the Under Pressure documentary that was, I think it was made in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was actually made for the Laserdisc release. It's a fantastic documentary. I do kind of wish it was remastered. It's in standard definition. I don't know if they could have remastered it for, at least for HD or not. I don't know. Small caveat, but it's, I just want to mention it at least. It does have some nice interviews with James Cameron. It does have a lot of the archival stuff, which again, I believe most of that actually does go back to the Laserdisc version. There's actually a lot of extras here. I do wish it had a little bit more, but at the same time, for me, at least the Under Pressure documentary really makes up for other stuff that I kind of feel could be on here. And because it does have both cuts of the film and this nice assortment of extras, I do want to give the extras a 4.5 out of 5 because I do feel that there's a lot here. Again, I do wish it was a little bit more, and I probably would have given it a 5 out of 5 if there was just something a little extra. But still, what's here is good, especially that Under Pressure documentary. Moving on to the audio, and this is definitely where, in my opinion, this release shines. So it does, surprisingly and happily, does have the I believe it's the original 2.0 stereo surround mix, theatrical mix, which I'm glad is on here. I'm pretty sure it's not a down mix. If I'm wrong, definitely let me know and I'll adjust my score accordingly. But as far as I know, it is the original theatrical mix, and it does have a brand new Dolby Atmos mix. So the fact that it does have the original theatrical mix is fantastic, and I'm so happy it's on here. And this new Atmos mix is definitely fantastic. As I mentioned before, I don't mind new mixes as long as the original theatrical mix is included on a release. And for a film like The Abyss, having this new Dolby Atmos mix that was, in my opinion, done properly sounds amazing. Really did, it didn't sound like it was a reimagining of it. It really just made it just kind of a nice, fuller sound, and really obviously, made my surround system, go into overdrive. So in my opinion, the audio definitely is a 5 out of 5. And now we get to the main thing, which is obviously it's the biggest question and also probably the biggest controversy of these three releases, The Abyss, Aliens, and True Lies. And this is, now they were overseen by James Cameron, so obviously this is how he wants them to look. And in everything I've read, again, I haven't gotten Aliens and True Lies yet as of this recording, but supposedly The Abyss is actually the best out of the three. And I definitely have my concerns for multiple of reasons. Now, I've seen a lot of people actually say that they don't really mind how it looks. Yeah, they kind of wish it maybe looked better, but they don't mind. Now, if you're happy with the way it looks, that's great. It's like, I mean, look, these aren't going to get re-released. This is what we have. I just have to be honest with how I feel about it. So The Abyss, what makes The Abyss kind of special is the fact that it was shot in Super 35mm film. Now, Super 35 was a format that came about, I think, mid-80s or so, but definitely kind of took off much more in the late 80s going forward. And Super 35 is a very solid 35mm format. It's really the most solid format that they had since they stopped using the old Technicolor process in the early 70s. Nice thing about Super 35, it was very expensive, so not a lot of films, were able to use it, but enough, at least especially big budget films, is that it had a very fantastic range, especially when it came to color that it could hold, and the grain structure of Super 35 is very, very fine. Now, it's not quite on par with the few formats that were above it, so you'd be, what would that be, like 65mm, 70mm, and IMAX, obviously would be formats that would be above Super 35, but underneath that, definitely it's a fantastic format. And I believe, again, that what was great is the fact that you could film Super 35 in regular 35mm cameras. You didn't need some specialized camera, as far as I know. And indeed, James Cameron used Super 35 for The Abyss. I would go on and use it in Terminator 2, True Lies, and Titanic. Now, James Cameron is also someone who has embraced technology and digital filmmaking over the last few years, and which is fantastic. I have no problems with that. I'm someone who has shot both on film and in various digital formats. Like, I mean, it's, each one has their pluses and minuses. But the thing that obviously has the most concern is the fact that these three films, and specifically I'm obviously going to talk about The Abyss for this video, is that they've been tweaked to almost make them look like they were filmed with digital cameras in a way. And supposedly there's this AI program that was used that has been around for a while. It's not necessarily that new, but I think this is one of the early cases where it's been actually used to this extent for a video transfer like this. And you've had similar programs for like photography and things, and the thing that it does, now I don't know the exact process, so bear with me on this. It could be kind of wrong, but I think it's somewhat like this, where basically it goes in, it sort of smooths out the image to get rid of a lot of the grain, and then it doesn't recreate the image, but it's almost like it recreates the detail that you lose by removing the grain. So then you sort of have this false sense of detail kind of put in, because what it looks like to me, what it looks like is, I'm not saying this is what's done, I'm just saying like how it looks to me. And unfortunately, I don't have a way to take screenshots and everything, so I don't have any visual ways of kind of showing you, so I do apologize. So I'm going to try and describe it as best I can as to how it looks. It looks as if it was the images has been softened, and then it was like artificially sharpened, and then another layer of softness put on to take away the harshness, sort of the harshness of the sharpening. Like, it looks kind of odd in a lot of ways. Now, I will say, because I have nothing against the technology, it depends obviously on how you use it, because there's nothing wrong with, again, using noise reduction to clean up an image, you know, adding some sharpening to an image. I mean, this is not bad. It just depends on how you do it. Thing is, a good chunk of the film, I will say, does look really good, and I think it works best in moments where you're not holding on something, where there's a lot of stuff going on in the action scenes and the underwater stuff, where there's so much going on where you're not kind of like really, you're just watching the film and things are happening. I noticed it more on the close-up shots and shots of just, you know, people sitting around talking, where it had that weird look, you know, that sort of like artificial sharpness, for lack of a better term. Like, it had a very similar look to that, and it just looked very weird, and I found it distracting. It was very distracting early on in the film, like, you know, right from the beginning, like, I was noticing it. And then, you know, you kind of start getting into the film a little bit, and there was enough going on where there wasn't enough where I could focus in on it, and then all of a sudden there would be like a quiet moment where it would become apparent again. As a movie that was shot on such a high quality film stock, I don't know why this was done, because naturally this film would look absolutely fantastic and you would have very fine grain. You would have this amazing image, and I don't know why this whole process was done. You know, I'd be very interested, I mean, we'll probably never see it, but I'd be very interested to know what the image looked like up to the point before they started doing this AI stuff to the transfer, because I have a feeling it probably looked pretty great. You know, we still had that natural film look. So I'm not a fan of this. I mean, again, there are big chunks of the film where I will say it looked good. So obviously, you know, and again, I'm not against this technology, but on those moments where it became obvious, I found it very distracting. And I really don't like the fact that it doesn't look like film. Because it is a film, and it was shot on film, and I want it to look like it was on film. Doesn't mean it can't be cleaned up. Doesn't mean you can't use these tools to a certain degree, but I still want a film shot on film to look like film. So with all that, honestly, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 just because there are so many chunks where it does look good. But honestly, what I'm really worried about this is how much, especially with maybe some studio films, is how much other companies, other filmmakers are going to be tempted to use this technology on their own films. Like, I don't want this to be the future of video transfers and everything, because it's like, this is not the way the film really should look. I may be wrong here, but even like color correction, I thought looked great. It's just this bizarre AI thing. And considering from what I've heard, this is the best looking out of the 3 films, The Abyss, True Lies, and Aliens. I'm kind of worried about seeing the other 2 now, especially True Lies, which I believe is supposedly the, you know, worst out of the 3. So, yeah. Now, again, I've seen a lot of reviews and I've seen a lot of posts from people who have seen it. A lot of them, they don't mind it, you know, or they mention it as a caveat, but they're not as like worked up about it as I am. I got to share my honest opinion on this, and I'm, you know, as great it is to have The Abyss, and I'm so happy that I can actually finally watch it, especially in some form of 4K. I'm not overly thrilled about this whole tinkering to this extent, and it really makes me concerned for other films that could come down the line, you know, remastered films that could come down the line and what could be done to them. So anyway, I hope it's not a trend that's starting. I hope this is maybe just something that, I doubt it's only going to be these 3 films, but they might be. So yeah, as my final thoughts on the 4K release of The Abyss, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5, mainly because of the extras and the audio. The audio was so fantastic. That's almost like what kills me. Obviously, the video aspect is really what bothers me. So that's my pseudo review of the 4K of The Abyss. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. I'll also I don't know if I explained any of my thoughts too well. I'll try and do better as well if you want me to kind of go into more detail. If you picked it up, definitely let me know your thoughts. I'll try and share my thoughts as well on the other two releases once they come in. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.